Hello, School Transportation Nation. It's Tony Corpin. We're excited you're here with us on the podcast. And I have Mr. Ryan Gray with me. We're going to be talking all the best news headlines in school transportation. Man, there are a lot of headlines this week, right, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. It's end of school, but the news cycle just keeps on churning.
Absolutely. Well, this episode is brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software, and by School Radio, your source for reliable radio communications. In just a second, Ryan's going to be speaking with Quanika Dukes-Spruill, the Executive Director of Transportation Services for Newark Board of Education Office of Pupil Transportation in New Jersey. Quanika is also going to be on a panel discussion out at STN Expo, along with a power panel of ladies. Got Nicole Porti on there. I think, who else is there, Ryan? We got Teresa Fleming. Is she on there too?
Teresa Fleming. So Teresa Fleming, the COO and Executive Director of Transportation for Philadelphia School District in Pennsylvania, large school district there, one of the largest in the nation. And another really large school district, Nicole Porti, formerly both Nicole and Teresa are past School Transportation News Transportation Directors of the Year. Nicole is now the Assistant Superintendent at Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools in North Carolina, the backyard of STN Expo East. So they're going to be with Quanika. The session after the trade show on Tuesday, July 15th, going to be looking at a really interesting take on investing in yourself, investing in your team. So much about driver shortage, personnel shortages. So really it's going to be bringing a leadership discussion to our attendees, doing a little bit different this year, not having breakouts after the trade show, but doing that general session. It's going to be a good 2-hour session. So really, there's going to be workshopping. It's going to be an interactive event. And Quanika actually is also on another panel in Reno too, looking at creating additional revenue streams or budget offsets with other programs in transportation. So she's going to dive into that a little bit more when I talk to her in a bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually got an interesting call the other day. I knew someone who used to work at one of the big contractors, and they are the head of infrastructure for an EV trucking company. And that EV trucking company is looking for places to charge their trucks and said, hey, we'd be willing to pay a school district if we could use their site as a charging point for our semi trucks. And they have an all electric semi truck fleet. And they're servicing heavily West Coast, Midwest. And I just thought, wow, that's an interesting revenue stream. And they were like, hey, we'll pay for the school district's infrastructure. We can help pay for the energy. We can help offset the costs. So talk about a unique opportunity to maybe work with a trucking company to provide kind of a shared service opportunity, right? They had mentioned that one of the challenges was where school districts might be shy to do this is there liability? Like if a truck drives on the facility and charges up, what does that look like? So these are kind of like new opportunities that could present themselves. And I love exploring ideas like this.
Yeah, absolutely. It is an intriguing concept. I think also too with that, you think of the unintended consequences. You have these trucks driving onto the school district lot. What's been one of the biggest worries that school districts deal with their drivers? They get them all signed up, get their CDL, pay for it, get the training, and then that driver leaves for a trucking company. So that's an added element to this as well. So I'm sure that definitely there's a lot of opportunities out there. So that would be an interesting one to follow. Absolutely. So we'll have to keep our eyes on that one for sure.
Yeah, always looking for those cool opportunities. And you can do that, Ryan. STN Expo. All those folks are going to be out in Reno, Nevada, July 11th through the 16th. That is like less than 30 days away. You guys can still sign up. We can lock in, get you set up. stnexpo.com/west. We'll be heading to Reno. Also Lake Tahoe for our Transportation Director Summit. We have our Bus Technology Summit and Green Bus Summit. Got a lot of training, a lot of companies out there, the brightest minds in the school school transportation industry are making things happen, as well as a ride and drive on the latest and greatest tech. We got a deep roster of speakers providing great operational training, safety training, special needs training. There's just a lot there to take in.
Absolutely. Looking forward to getting everybody out there. It's great and really energizing, I find, to meet up with our attendees. And, so many times throughout the year, we're a bit insulated. We're here at our office or our home office. We're reaching out to people, having phone calls, emails, following news, the news cycle, writing up articles, planning sessions. But it's definitely nice to get on the road at our conferences or at other conferences to meet up with folks in the industry. And there's nothing like meeting in person, being able to talk to somebody. So much translation gets lost in email and even phone calls. And it's just that sense of immediacy, Tony, that I like. And you're able to sit down, have a cup of coffee with someone, talk about how their operations are getting impacted, catch up with them, find out new technology, find out what their needs are, what they're looking for, always bring up great article ideas. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. Before we get to the top headlines, we had a quick message. Hey, safety is a number one priority for everyone in school transportation, and even more so when needing to communicate in a school bus setting. School radios, push to talk over cellular or POC radios, are the safety enhancement you need to provide clear communication across all aspects of your fleet. Schools, SROs, that's school resource officers, and beyond. School radio helps take safety and connectivity a step further by offering interoperability solutions that bridge conventional two-way radios with POC systems, creating a unified network that boosts effectiveness and safety. This integrated strategy guarantees smooth communication in both emergency situations and daily activities. To learn more about how school radio can improve safety in your communication methods, visit school-radio.com. That's school-radio.com. All right, Ryan, hit me with it. Man, Trump signed the bill. What happened? What's this mean?
Yeah, so last week, President Donald Trump signed that much anticipated Congressional Review Act. We've talked a bit about it over the past couple weeks. Very controversial. Essentially, the Senate parliamentarian had ruled that it was improper for the House and Senate to move forward with this CRA because it targeted the California Air Resources Board waivers that it had obtained in previous administrations, especially in the Biden administration, for enforcing several of its regulations that target emissions. It's the so-called electric mandate that we've heard a lot about going back a couple years to the run up to the presidential election last fall. While not technically a mandate, there were different provisions, different regulations looking at passenger vehicles. So there was a requirement in there for passenger vehicles in California, and with there's 11 states or so that follow a lot of CARB regulations. That was basically mandating that only electric vehicles, passenger vehicles, could be purchased starting in 2035. That was one of the elements in this CRA. It actually targeted 3 regulations. The one that really impacts school transporters is the one on the Advanced Clean Trucks rule. So that one basically didn't mandate that electric school buses or electric trucks, for that matter, be purchased. But what it did do was it set goals basically for OEMs to manufacture and sell a certain amount of electric zero emissions vehicles over, it was increasing as we moved forward. And so that one was basically revoked. That waiver was revoked. Now, We know that California had a lawsuit ready to go, basically the moment that Trump signed the CRA. So he did do that last week. As we were recording this, I had not been able to check my news feed to see if that had actually been filed. But all the folks that I've been talking to, they've been saying, hey, it's basically ready to go. And will there be other states likely that will either jump onto that lawsuit or file their own? So it's provided a little bit of clarity just in terms of folks were waiting on that CRA to see if that would actually pass, and then would it get signed. We figured it would. We know that this has been a big campaign promise from President Trump. So now this is moving forward. Again, what's going to be the role that lawsuits play? We will be discussing this and other elements of the uncertainties that have been presented to the marketplace with a panel that I'm actually going to be facilitating with several of our OEM partners. That's going to be on Sunday, July 13th. So, in setting that up, it's been interesting because, Tony, as you can imagine, when it comes to business and it comes to manufacturing, when there's a lot of uncertainty, these companies don't or can't go public with perspectives yet because things change. And I sensed in talking to them last week that there is a little bit more ability to speak to what we're seeing. But we're going to do the best we can, and we're going to see what these coming weeks tell us. But they understand how difficult it is for school districts and bus companies right now to make those purchase plans because they don't know which way the political winds are going to end up blowing permanently. Or at least permanently over the next couple of years. And as we're staring down this 2027 date for the EPA greenhouse gas emissions phase 3 regulation, that still is being reviewed from what I've gathered so far by the EPA. So, will that move forward with the even stricter rules on diesel emissions, basically? Which again, a lot of people are saying, hey, that's, it's not a mandate, but it basically is to zero emissions because they're making it harder and harder for diesel vehicles as well as other internal combustion vehicles to meet requirements. And we know propane does. It meets the requirement that's set forth in 2027. But it's going to continue to get more and more stringent. So folks are just looking for as much clarity as they can. We're hoping to provide that in Reno as much as we can, again, based upon what we know at the time. So, but yeah, with that CRA, it does provide a little bit more clarity, at least in terms of, okay, we know what the next steps are likely going to be. And again, we'll then have to see what that legal battle will mean.
Yeah, I think for me, Ryan, we've been prognosticating what this could mean for the industry. I think there's two sides of this, right? You have OEMs like IC, which would be under the International Motors brand, and you have Freightliner, you have FCCC, DTNA, Daimler Truck North America, right? They are very affected by what goes on in trucking, right? Obviously, the tariffs has affected things in trucking. We have now this, which, we assume that there's probably going to be a pre-buy of trucks and school buses as a result of some of these regulatory things, right? And that's going to move the needle in terms of people buying new equipment because they don't want to pay that delta between the engine tech, right? Which I don't know how much that delta is, but I'm betting it's at least $10,000 to $30,000, right? It's got to be a pretty big delta. And so if you start removing the requirements for fleets to do that, they're not going to pre-buy, right? They're just not. And that is definitely going to impact some of these manufacturers in terms of what they were predicting to be the buying cycles of customers. Because if I'm a school district and I'm like, hey, I don't have to buy these buses because I'm not trying to chase this money. And usually school districts, right, they have a fixed CapEx budget to buy equipment and there's a certain replacement cycle. Also, you have to consider do I consider a used bus versus a new bus now that these regulations aren't going to impact me? So because I'm, affected by budgetary cuts, or I'm doing more with less, or I've got the same budget, how do I stretch that? What do I do? So I think a lot of districts and private fleets are going to probably be reconsidering their fleet acquisition strategy as this changes. And clearly it's a very fluid situation. It's dynamic in the way it's adjusting. There's lawsuits. It's different in every state. The Fed can do what the Fed does, but does that trickle down and affect people at the state level? So I think that, as you said, it's a bit of a moving target. And for the OEMs to go on a panel and describe exactly how it's going to play out, there's really no clear path. There's a lot of like potential paths that this could go. But we're just going to see how it plays out. But it's very intriguing to me to see, like, hey, does this mean the residual value of the existing fleet that you own, Mr. School Transportation Director, is now worth more because these engines are going to be more coveted currently? Now, if the regs change, then things might change. But what does that happen? Is it worth more? Is it worth less? We'll see. It's intriguing.
Absolutely. And one of the things that, in planning this conversation with the OEMs is I've said, hey, what can districts do now instead of, you not trying to have the crystal ball out, because we know they can't do that. And, but what can districts do now, right now, knowing what we know now. And yes, there's tariffs out there. So it was encouraging last week when President Xi in China and President Trump got together and they announced that they had reached, I believe it was a framework for the tariffs. So I was reading, someone described it as a framework for the framework. So that's even changing, and we don't have a lot of clarity. But the fact that they're talking, it seems to be some fruitful conversations. So that was some potentially good news. Definitely better than it could have been. So what's the impact of the tariffs going to be? That's another thing that the OEMs they don't know. We've seen those tariffs pushed back and back a number of times. And yes, there are some at play. So it's looking back at what did we learn from back in 2021 when the tariffs were increased with China. We got through that. So anytime that there's that uncertainty, it just makes people squeamish, either just from the anxiety or the fear of the unknown, or just not being able to freely and openly say, hey, this is what's going to happen. It creates a lot of anxiety. So, but you're right, Tony, it'll be interesting to see as folks are looking at their purchase runway, what is going to make the most sense for them. And you would think a lot of folks will figure, okay, well, we'll purchase more diesel. An interesting element to this too, and you alluded to it, Tony, is with those plans that these OEMs have made, they were operating under the assumption that, okay, there was only going to be certain states that they could have diesel available for, or they would have to drastically reduce that number. Well, now with this CRA, and again, it comes back to this legal fight that we know is going to happen, how does that impact things? And how does that impact the OEMs who are looking and going, oh, wait, we were only planning on having this many diesel available for this state or these states. And suddenly is that demand going to flip? And what kind of position is that going to put the OEMs in? So again, a lot to be figured out, but it makes for great theater. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know with the China thing, it's been all about the rare earth elements. So I can only imagine that's again about battery technology as well, and all these other use cases. So that seems to be the biggest talking point with the China thing.
And there was some positivity that came out of those conversations. Now, again, no details, but that, as you said, that seemed to be a big part of Xi and Trump's conversations. So what does that mean? We'll find out, but definitely it seems like that was a positive result of the conversations, and we know those conversations are going to continue.
Yeah. All right. Well, shifting gears, there was a headline coming out of Chicago that they utilize multimodalities, right? The transit system in CPS, Chicago Public Schools, uses to move students around, but they're facing budgetary challenges which might impact student transportation. What's going on with that, Ryan?
Now let's talk about budget shortages. There's actually at the state legislature, there's a shortfall in the budget. So they're looking at transit funding. And granted, transit has the ability to get FTA money, Federal Transit Administration money, but there also is the state supplement. So that state supplement is looking to get slashed, essentially a $771 million shortfall that's projected to hit the Regional Transportation Authority. So that oversees CTA, Metra, and PACE. So we're talking bus, we're talking subways or rail. And that's for fiscal year 2026. So the legislature is working on that right now. The budget has not been set the last we looked. But we were looking at it and saying, okay, well, if there's this big budget shortfall, we know that a lot of students in Chicago, especially high school students, they're not on the yellow school bus, and there's been yellow school bus cuts. We know that there has been a lot of yellow school bus service issues in Chicago, historically as well as recently, tied to the driver shortage. So there's been a lot of slashing of yellow school bus service. So what does this mean for teenagers or others who are relying on the transit there in the city? So basically, a lot of kids could be affected by this. Chicago is basically telling us that, hey, we're putting these elements into place to try to make up for this. They have said that they are increasing wages for their yellow school bus drivers to try to account for this. They have been doing that. They're working with the Illinois Secretary of State to offer CDL testing and study materials in both English and Spanish. They've also implemented a hub stop pilot program a couple years ago. We've seen that used effectively in a lot of school districts, where Denver was one of the first to do that several years ago. So, a lot of folks are dealing with budget issues. We were talking about that, Tony, before we started recording. And if you have the yellow school bus service being impacted, but then you also have transit, like what's happening in Chicago, that can put a real strain, an added strain on school districts. So, a lot still to be figured out with that. Like I said, the legislature is still working on that fiscal year 2026 budget. So it's just, now that we're in summer, it's not that transportation ends, of course, as well. We have a lot of summer school, a lot of summer programs up and ready. So transporters often tell me their jobs never cease. People think, oh, it's the summer. And you often read this in news articles. Oh, what's the summer now? And the school buses are just sitting there. Well, no, they're not. They're being used. Yeah, maybe not as many as during the school year, but transportation operations, as you all know, in transportation nation land, never ceases. So it just keeps folks kind of on the edge of their seats. No rest for the weary. But you can check out more on that article over at stononline.com.
All right, Ryan's going to be talking with Quanika just a second after these messages. Hey guys, what do software, hardware, and safety have in common? One word: TransFinder. At the STN Expo in Reno, TransFinder won 3 Innovation Choice Awards, voted on by STN Expo attendees for best software, best hardware, best safety technology. TransFinder's Route Finder plus routing solution and apps, Stop Finder and Wayfinder, are well known in the industry. Not everyone realizes TransFinder provides hardware like card readers, tablets, and mounts. And as for safety, Patrol Finder for schools is TransFinder's latest solution, designed to make buses and campuses safer. TransFinder's president and CEO Antonio Civitella said the recognition means so much because it's voted on on by STN Expo attendees. Civitella said, we know a lot is riding on TransFinder because a lot is riding on those yellow buses that travel through our communities. TransFinder must continue to innovate as more is being expected of transportation departments from district leadership as well as parents. Learn more at transfinder.com. That's transfinder.com.
School Transportation Nation, please welcome to the podcast stage this week's guest, Quanika Dukes-Spruill, the Executive Director of Transportation, Newark Board of Education in New Jersey. Quanika, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I am so excited to join you today, Ryan. Thank you so much for the invitation. I think I'm even more excited because I get an opportunity to talk about transportation in the great city of Newark and in the great state of New Jersey.
Garden
so
State.
Thank you for having me. That's right. Great Garden State.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you a native of New Jersey?
I am. Actually, I was born here. Won't tell you the year, but nevertheless, I am a native of Newark, New Jersey. What's very interesting about my, I'll say, educational career here in Jersey, as it relates to my position now, I went to Newark Board of Education public schools from first grade to third grade. And in third grade, the district decided to bus students. So I went from my neighborhood school to a school that was maybe a mile and a half away and had to ride the school bus. So I had an incident on the school bus one afternoon, and it was a bullying incident. And after, my parents pulled us from public school and we went to a private school. So years later, I'm in the role of executive director for student transportation. And one of my highlights is ensuring the safety of students, not just as they go to school, but their ride. So it's funny how, my past has definitely brought me to where I am and my philosophy on student transportation.
Well, what better person to ensure that you experienced it and how the school bus needs to run and what doesn't need to happen, and so you're there to affect those things. So
yeah.
Good job. So that's a little bit of your background, because I always want to talk with our guests and share a little about who you are, so our nation gets to know who you are. So that was you got started on kind of your background. So how did you decide, okay, I'm going to go into education, I'm going to go into transportation specifically?
Okay. Well, I've been an employee of the Newark Board of Education for 21 years in January. I went to college in Massachusetts. I have 2 undergraduate degrees, an associate's degree in communication, and my bachelor's degree from Harvard University. Fast forward, after graduating from college, my first stint in, I'll say, education, I worked for an educational management company in Boston, where we opened charter schools throughout the United States. Ended up opening 2 schools here in New Jersey. Got engaged to, I guess, my high school sweetheart, and moved back to New Jersey and ended up getting a provisional teaching certificate and worked as a second grade teacher in one of the charter schools that I opened. I was then afforded the opportunity to work as a middle manager here in the district in the Office of Attendance. So I did that for about 7 years. Then as a project manager for an $8 million grant that the district was awarded, Safe Schools, Healthy Students Initiative, and back to attendance for a little while. I ended up assisting our school business administrator with a specialized project, which was on the operations side. I always worked on the academic side of the fence. She asked me to assist in student transportation during a transition of the director at that time. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. And at that time, I was in an executive master's program for principals, leadership, policy, and administration. So I have an executive master's degree from Seton Hall University. But nevertheless, planned on going back into the school building as an administrator, but I'm working in transportation and loving every minute of it. 10 years later, I'm in the role. So I've been executive director for student transportation for 10 years here in the Newark Board of Education. And I know I probably sound like a nerd, but I'm definitely that bus lady. My background is not in student transportation. It really is in project management. So it fit being able to come in, put pieces together. We've been able to implement so much in the last 10 years that I'm looking forward to the next 5 and what we're able to do to transform student transportation in Newark, New Jersey.
I know you're far too young to retire, so that's not like a
How about that?
She's like, oh, breaking news here on the School Transportation Nation podcast. But no, literally, if you'll have to go to our social media nation, and Quanika is a definitely a young lady. So she's, if she is, well, we won't even get into like the retirement thing, but I just thought that was funny. But so Newark, I know that about 80% of your students are students with IEPs, individualized education programs.
Yeah.
How many students are total? Let's look at the total enrollment first at Newark. Then how many are you transporting?
Okay, so we have enrollment upwards of about 40,000 students here in the Newark Board of Education, and 26,000 of the 40,000 students are eligible for transportation resources through state statute. 5,600 students are eligible for busing. The remaining students get public transportation or a transportation reimbursement. So it's very important to know about the Office of Pupil Transportation. Well, I have 37 staff members. If you are a student and you live in Newark and are eligible for state required transportation services, you filter through our office. So we support students who attend charter schools. We support students who attend non-public or private schools and even choice schools. But again, if you live in Newark and you are eligible for transportation services, you filter through my team and my office.
Okay. And so that is state law then, that you're to transport not only the public school kids that are in Newark, but the private and charter?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So and so it's 80% or about that you are transporting with students with IEPs. So, and I know that you rely heavily on contractors, correct?
Absolutely. So I'll clarify if you don't mind, Ryan.
Sure.
80% of the 5,600.
Okay.
5,600 students have IEPs. A very small portion of that number are eligible through specialized ELL programs, McKinney-Vento as well. But yeah, a large number, well, I'll say not just a large number, but the students who are eligible for busing is done through our school bus contractors. We work with 63 contractors at this time, and I have the pleasure of meeting with our 63 contractors next Tuesday for our end of the year partnership meeting. I meet with them on a monthly basis just to ensure that not only are the goals and objectives of Newark's style of transportation is met, but also that we're compliant with state statute. And it's also a way for us to hear from our contractors. And since we've implemented the mandatory meetings, transportation services have improved tremendously year over year. So it's something that I'm, again, preparing to do for next Tuesday, and I look forward to doing every month.
So with all those contractors, obviously a lot of communication, like you mentioned, you're having your end of the year meeting with them. How does that work? Do you have supervisors for each contractor or for, a supervisor that takes a certain number? 63, that's a lot. How does that,
Yeah.
how do you lead that team? How do you make sure that there is that collaboration and communication every day?
So my group, boots on the ground team, I have 3 route managers. And the route managers, not only do they create the pathway to and from school for our students who ride school bus transportation, but they are also the liaisons between school staff and our parents. So if there are day-to-day issues, our school staff are able to reach out to our route managers for support. If the contractors have concerns, require communication, aside from their bus driver being able to talk to that school-based staff person or the parent at drop-off, they can communicate with us. So I have 3, again, transportation route managers. I also have 3 transportation inspectors that go out on a day-to-day basis, that if there are complaints, if there's issues, and even for preventative matters, we go out, we ensure that transportation happens in the field as it's designed. I have 2 coordinators, supervisors here in central office. I also have a group of omnibus operators, our team of 15 drivers in a fleet of vehicles with a supervisor that provides a much needed service to district students in field trips, athletic events, midday college runs. So again, we have a very, very busy transportation office, but managing the contractors is the majority of our efforts. We deal with contracts, of course, making sure that compliance happens. Great Garden State has a lot of rules and regulations for school bus contractors. So I'm proud to say that we do a really good team with compliance. And I have a team of 3 clerical staff who ensures that we receive our annual certifications, that drug testing is done, that the guidelines of the contract in terms of various paperwork, the insurance is met. So again, my 37 transportation professionals, every day they come in here with the mission, and I'm glad to say that from this end, I believe that we're doing a magnificent job here in Newark.
And I know that with the students with disabilities who you are transporting, a big aspect of your operations is Medicaid reimbursement. So actually, you're going to be in Reno with us, STN Expo West, in a few weeks next month, in July, and you're going to be doing a couple of things. But one of the sessions you're going to be on is going to be looking at basically creative budgeting, offsetting costs, maybe even creating revenue, and some different models from different districts across the nation. You being one of them, and one of the big things again is you're talking about Medicaid. A lot of people get scared off by that, and there's, Medicaid's been in the news from DC lately with the stuff Congress is doing and the big beautiful bill and whatnot and cuts. But you guys have a lot of experience with that. Can you take our listeners through a little bit of how you and why you guys go after this Medicaid reimbursement? And is it as scary as some people think it is?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say scary. Well, at least not for us here in Newark. We have a tremendous partnership, a great partnership with our colleagues in the Office of Special Education, and they value the importance of this particular benefit. And it's one component that is transportation eligible for reimbursement through Special Education Medicaid Initiative, which SEMI is the acronym. So this program provides school districts with the opportunity to be reimbursed for medically related services. And that is definitely based on the student's IEP. So these services include evaluations, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, language, nursing, and transportation services, which is, of course, my area. So we receive reimbursement of about $5 per student per day if our contractors submit attendance logs. So this is a very, very important component of this initiative because this is how Medicaid determines reimbursement by the actual attendance log. So I'm really looking forward to sharing this information with my colleagues in Reno because it's a tremendous benefit. And we have recouped quite a bit of money since we've started submitting the required documents to receive the reimbursement.
And what's interesting to me also with what you guys are doing is you're not really using the technology. You're actually with across 63 contractors again.
That's right.
And you have your staff of 37. So part of their job is ensuring that these contractors are submitting these logs. You're talking about paper forms,
yes,
correct? So someone's got to send those in, then someone's got to receive them, someone's got to input them.
Yes,
but it's working very smoothly because a lot of people think, but I don't have. How am I going to do this? I don't have the technology. You're saying, hey, that's possible.
It is. It's definitely possible. Was it easy initially? No, it wasn't. But in assessing what did not work and fixing it, we have increased the number of attendance sheets that we receive from my contractors by 3,000 since last year. A little bit of a hand-holding process initially, but anything worth having, right? You got to work at it. So ensuring that the attendance logs that the frontline staff, our drivers and our aides are completing is universal. So making sure that we created the attendance template for the drivers to complete was important. It may sound like, a really small thing, but once we started getting attendance sheets that didn't match various forms and not legible, we took the time to ensure that the contractors had what they needed in order to submit what was required for this reimbursement.
And I know that your neighbors just to the east of you, across the bay there, New York City, they have been kind of struggling with this for a while and trying to use technology, and it's taken a long time. It's caused a lot of controversy over there. But in terms of what you guys are doing in Newark, are you looking at maybe implementing technology for this? Because a lot of times what we're talking about, right, is student ridership verification.
Right.
That's what, using GPS for that. And we don't like to call student tracking because that has a negative connotation to it. So we prefer student ridership verification. But again, you guys are able, with some hand-holding, able to get it. Now, is this something, though, that you're looking at maybe in transitioning to technology to help with this in the future?
Yeah, so that's a really, really good question. Of course, we embrace technology. We are actually the first school district in the state of New Jersey that has an electronic means of implementing the aid in lieu of reimbursement process, where our parents whose children attend non-public and private schools have an electronic means to submit their documentation for reimbursement. So we're very, very proud that we're the first school district to do so. So we do indeed embrace technology. However, when it comes to student data, we hold that information very near and dear. And we haven't had a success, I'll say, in finding an appropriate way where we're able to have these electronic platforms for student management on the bus. When it comes to working with contractors, yes, they are agents of the Newark Board of Education. They're contracted employees. But in terms of what a lot of the platforms will require for taking attendance on a bus, we're not quite there yet. So doing a great job now with communication without that web-based, I'll say, means while in the field. We're managing okay, but for right now, for the purpose of STEMI and for ensuring that students are coming to school in terms of attendance, the paper process is working for us. So in the future, I'm hoping that we'll get there. But for right now, this is the way in which we're managing, knowing who's on the bus.
Okay. In terms of other technology, do you have a wish list or maybe some other things that you've implemented? Obviously one of the big technology items right now is electric school buses.
Yeah.
You're probably happy that you don't live across the river and have to be worrying about that mandate with electric school buses. But wanted to hear what New Jersey and what you guys are looking at in terms of electric school buses. Again, if there's other technology that you're looking at to try to help you make the transportation even safer, even more efficient.
Yeah, so great question. We were actually the recipients here in Newark of the 2023 Clean School Bus Grant from the EPA. So we are excited that we are about to welcome our first set of electric school buses the next school year. We were awarded 6 vehicles within this grant. So I am actively working on the needs to introduce electric school buses in our fleet. So we're excited about it. I know that one of our vendors, they will be, I'll say, introducing electric school buses in September.
Some might say guinea pigging, but
yeah. Very good. Yeah. So yeah, it's coming here to New Jersey. I'm glad that it's not per se your blitzkrieg introduction where it's a mandate at this point. I think that there's some things that we're still figuring out, infrastructure being one of them. So the pilot, and I like to use the term pilot when things are introduced slowly, because I think that is the best and the most appropriate way to do so. There's always kinks that you have to work out, and to have it done in a smaller scale, especially for the largest school district in New Jersey that transports, again, 5,600 students with 995 buses on the road every day. Starting small is very wise and important. So I'm happy with what we're about to get into.
995. And these are all contractor again, right?
Yeah.
So that's a ton of buses for 5,600 kids.
Yeah, it is. But again, special needs. So you have some students who are on individual routes. You have some routes that are smaller. But our average load is about 7 students per bus. But yeah, it's a lot of buses on the road on a daily basis.
Perfect segue to this trend in alternative transportation, quote unquote, and vans, sedans, whatnot. We were talking a little bit about this before we started recording.
Yeah.
And Nation, you're aware, hopefully, by the National Congress on School Transportation had a historic writing committee on alternative transportation last month. First time the National Congress has ever taken up a non-yellow school bus issue because of the plethora of all these other vehicles now and these other companies that have started up over the last 10 years or some longer than that for this non-yellow transportation, targeting a lot of students with disabilities, a lot of students who are experiencing homelessness that are served by McKinney-Vento, as well as some other out-of-district. Like you said, you're transporting a lot of students to private schools and charter schools. What's Newark doing or looking to do? And I understand there's a state law or state bill currently being debated around this issue when it comes to non-yellow transportation.
Yeah, so you're absolutely correct. New legislation is underway at this time for this form of transportation that is so successful in other states. So we're happy to hear that we'll have an opportunity here in New Jersey to introduce alternative vehicles. How it would work, in my opinion, so far what I see is a reduction in contractor costs. It's very expensive for school districts and ed services commissions to partner with school bus contractors for 54 passenger school vehicles, for 24 passenger, even 16 passenger buses. So the alternative school bus routes, which a lot do offer van style services, we're looking forward to introducing here in New Jersey. Newark specific, my colleagues in other cities are also quite excited that this is a possibility. So what we're looking at in legislation specifically is the need for school bus drivers that drive alternative vehicles or even vans to have a CDL endorsement. Is that really necessary to be able to know the mechanics of a 54 passenger school bus when your primary responsibility is a van, mom and pop style van? You don't necessarily need it. But to allude to your mention of our previous conversation, the requirements for training for bus staff will be the same. And that's necessary. Understanding what it takes to transport students with special needs will be an important component. So we're excited. Are we there yet? Maybe in a couple of months. But again, understanding that our state does take school transportation very seriously, I understand that we want to make sure that we have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted.
And before I let you go, it would be remiss for me not to bring up leadership, because that's what you went to school for.
Yeah.
Basically, number of degrees that you have, but executive leadership, always a big topic, especially when we're talking about STN Expo in either Reno or out in Charlotte, North Carolina. By the way, that one's coming up March 26th through 31st of 2026. It'll be here before we know it. But want to get your perspective on leadership and how you lead. What kind of leader are you? What do you believe a leader should do in transportation as well as just in every walk of life?
Wow. So great question. Someone from the academic side of the fence. Remember, I started my stint as a second grade teacher. Mm-hmm. Knowing that when you are in an academic environment, that is first and foremost what's on the mind of folks who work within the school district. I'm on the operations side. So having a background in teaching, having a background understanding the importance of getting kids to come to school, it is very, 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 very important to me to merge the two. So educating the principal, that teacher, that assistant superintendent on the importance of transportation staff, it is key for me. And I think that we have come a long way here in Newark in meeting our goals of educating the academic side of the fence to understand that transportation is not an ancillary piece of the component. So it takes a lot of training, right? Infusing yourself in environments that maybe you were not invited to before, that planning of a large scale event. We have so many events that's going on now where transportation is at the table at the planning stage. So they understand, wow, okay, for this to happen, for that debate competition, for that large scale athletic event where we're moving 3,000 students for one event, yeah, I need transportation because they're an important part of the process. With here in a large city where 60%, I believe the number was last year, of our residents do not have cars, how are we getting students to school? It's through busing and public transportation resources. So I believe that, the 3 degrees that I have on the academic side, I think they're better used to serve our students here on the operations side. So to speak regarding my staff, you asked me about my leadership style. It is definitely transformational. I am trying to not just create systems that are once considered old, like, again, the paper process with the aid in lieu. We're doing it electronically now. Getting my team to understand that this is a viable piece of the academic process. We need leaders, right? So I'm looking to my staff to get that education, get the certification, be excited about what it is that you do, understand your role, understand your importance, and bringing them into the creative process. So I think that when I first came, we had 7 staff members in central office. Now I'm up to 16. I have people asking all the time, hey, do you have any positions? Because it's exciting here in transportation. So I love it.
Awesome.
I absolutely love it.
And I'm sure you probably run across some people that act like second graders. So that's good to have. That's good to have that background to be able to, make sure that, sometimes somebody needs a timeout or needs their favorite blankie or a milk, but it's, a great way to end this segment, because as well, you're also going to be in Reno on the Tuesday after our trade show. We have a special general session, Bet on Yourself, Bet on Your Team. And you're going to be partnered with Nicole Portee, the assistant superintendent for Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools in North Carolina, and Teresa Fleming, the chief operations officer and executive director of transportation for Philadelphia School District. So down in Pennsylvania. So
forward to
that's
it.
Great way to promote that conversation as well. So, again, Quanika, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Thank you. I really appreciate the invitation, and I had a blast. Thank you so much, Ryan, for having me.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon in Reno.
Looking forward to it.
A special thanks to Ryan and Quanika for jumping on the episode. Great conversations. Really enjoyed it. Lots happening out there in the nation. So make sure you go to stnonline.com for the latest news and analysis. Don't forget to sign up for STN Expo this summer, July 11th through the 16th. Go to stnexpo.com/west. Go check out our agenda, our networking events, all the great stuff we have planned for you to elevate your operation, your safety. We are here for you, nation, and make sure you get the best out of everything that you do every day for your job. We want to make you better. That is our job every day. That is our goal. We want to make sure it enhance your position and make you grow as a leader. All right, guys, don't forget this podcast brought to you by TransFinder and School Radio. We appreciate them so much and want you to thank them too. Let them know you heard about them on the STN podcast. Guys, don't forget you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to Pods Nation. We love you. We'll see you next week. Take care.